Welcome to the African Water Association's webinar series on COVID. Thank you everyone for joining us at the African Water Association's webinar on the impact of COVID for IT departments within our water utilities. My name is Mrs. Diao Fatoumata. I'm the Director of Membership Services at AFWA. I have the pleasure of welcoming on board our panelists, whom I will introduce to you as soon as I've given you a little bit of background on AFWA. The African Water Association is a Pan-African organization composed of water utilities, sanitation utilities, municipalities, non-profit organizations, academic institutions, and individuals working in the water sector throughout the world. Our members are primarily here, are active members, that is, water utilities or throughout the African continent. We have today the topic of the COVID impact on our water utilities at their particular IT departments. We know that our utilities have thrived and managed to continue to offer services continuously throughout the crisis and throughout the confinement, continue to do so. Everybody is observing barrier measures the best they can, and so we want to hear from the information and technology departments how they within their utilities have been affected, and the rest of the questions you will uncover as we go. So please join me in welcoming on this panel Ms. Dinah Chiume, who is the acting IT manager for the Lilongwe Water Board. Ms. Chiume holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Computer Science and Statistics. She brings 10 years of experience in the information analysis and design. So currently she is also a systems analyst and development officer, senior IT officer at the Lilongwe Water Board. Ms. Chiume, welcome. I'd like the viewers to also please join me in welcoming Mr. John Kwanga at the National Water and Sewage Corporation in Uganda. Mr. Kwanga is the Senior Manager of IT, Infrastructure and Security at the National Water Sewage Corporation in Kampala, in Ghana. He's an IT professional and brings 15 years of experience in the industry. Mr. Kwanga holds a master's degree in computer science, so Master of Science in Computers from Makerere University in Kampala, and also holds an MBA from Sikkim Minapal in India. He is a specialist manager and billing data management professional, and he has developed the in-house billing system owned and used currently by the National Water and Sewage Corporation. His focus has mainly been on development, improvement, and training in aspects of billing systems, which we know are really crucial to our water utilities from an economic perspective. And so please join me in welcoming Mr. Kwanga to the panel. Mr. Kwanga, welcome. I also have the pleasure of welcoming on board Mr. Martin Wamalma Nangole. Please forgive me, I hope I have not mispronounced your name. Mr. Nangole is the ICT director at the Nairobi City Water and Sewage Company right now. Mr. Nangole also holds a BEA, an MBA in strategic management, and a master in computer science. And he is a specialist in strategy design. please join me again in welcoming Mr. Nangole. Mr. Nangole, welcome to the panel. So I am now inviting the viewers to navigate with us through the questions which we will go ahead and administer to each of our panelists. Our first question is somewhat general and formulated as follows. What measures have been taken by governments and corporate leaders on how you have responded and how have you responded actually to these measures at the corporate level within your different utilities? So I'd like to give the floor to Ms. Chiume to give us her answer on that, please. Ms. Chiume, mic is yours.
Thank you very much, Fatu. In case of Malawi, a complete lockdown was not fully implemented, but the government directed that organizations should implement the working in shifts arrangement. So that was implemented for all departments in our organization. And in terms of employee protection specifically, we had to divide our department into 2 wards, considering that all essential support staff are available in each category of staff. Mm-hmm. And in addition, we also made sure that we made available home internet access to all staff members. Sorry, not to all staff members, but to key staff members, so that they should be able to access our services remotely. Mm-hmm. And we immediately had to implement the video conferencing facility to enable online collaborations and virtual meetings. So in short, that's what the board did in response to social distancing for in protecting staff members. And then in terms of protecting the customers, we intensified use of online payment solutions. We already had an arrangement with banks. They're already collecting funds on our behalf, but we intensified marketing of the same so that customers should use more of digital payment platforms and avoid visiting our payment offices. And we did that, and another solution that we provided for the customers was the point of sale machines. So with this, customers will have an option to make payments as the meter reading is taking place. So yeah, all this is to ensure that customers should have limited visits to our offices, and also intensified marketing of our call center solution so that whenever they have issues, queries, complaints, and faults to be reported, they have to use the call center platform. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's it. And we had a biometric access control system which used finger recognition technology. We had to suspend that due to the pandemic, and we replaced that with the access control system that uses cards. And we had to replace all equipment and procured cards for all staff members. Those are the few things that we did. Yeah, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chiume. I'd like to actually apologize for skipping this in my haste because we started with a bit of a delay. I'd like to also introduce my colleagues who are with me on this panel and who have been organizing with me and are delivering with me. I'd like to introduce Mr. Nikes Kwaku, who is the co-moderator with me on this panel, and the Information Technology Manager at the African Water Association. Also on board with us is Madame Stephanie Zikona, whom you are not seeing on the screen, but who is in charge of all information communication aspects and manager of communications at the African Water Association. So I will then continue on and ask Mr. Nangole to please answer this first question, if you would, please.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
From our end, actually, I'll talk in terms of what the government intervention did. Then I'll be able to share with my colleagues on from the corporate level as an institution what we've been able to do. From the government perspective, definitely, we have what we call the Ministry of Health here, which has been leading the charge of announcing policy measures and behavioral protocols. One of the things that they have been doing is encouraging the citizen to be washing their hands frequently with hand sanitizers, covering our nose and mouth in public places, then avoiding close contact with anyone who has a cold or flu. Then in addition, they have also implemented what we call cessation of movement. You know, in Kenya, we are divided into counties. So you realize that there was a cessation of movement between different counties. Like for me, I cannot be able to move from Nairobi to another county. Then in terms of tax measures, definitely the government came out and they were able to reduce what we call the pay as you earn on our income, whereby they were able to reduce it from, you know, our pay as you earn is around 30%. They were able to reduce it from 30 to 25%. Then they were able to reduce also VAT, just to cushion on the citizen. They were able to reduce the value added tax from 16% to 14%. In terms of employee-related measures, the government asked all non-essential staff to be working from their homes. Any non-essential staffs, actually, they are not really allowed to go into their offices. At the corporate level for us, what we've done as a Nairobi Water, we've actually come up with systems whereby most of our non-essential staffs are able to work out remotely from their homes. And one of the beauty thing is that we've really leveraged on technology, whereby we are using the Zoom, Microsoft Team, and in terms of the critical applications, whereby we have what we call the virtualized Citrix environment, we are able now to virtualize all our critical applications so that our staffs are able to access from their homes. In addition to our customers, one of the beauty things that we've done in Nairobi Water is we never have what we call the banking halls. We never collect our money through our banks. What we've done is we've automated all our collection, whereby we are leveraging on the mobile platform. So we really didn't have a major impact in our operation, because any payment of the services actually was being done through the mobile money platform. Another strategy that we came up with as an institution, whereby we're able to also deliver water, because one of the key things that the government has been telling us that you have to wash your hands and soap. And you know, in this country, we have some areas whereby the accessibility of water is a big challenge. So we had to come up with a plan whereby we're able to deliver water through our water tankers 24/7. Then another measure that we came on board is that we also encourage our customers to be reading their own meters. Because one of the key things that our staff are involved is they keep on moving from estate to estate doing the meter reading. So what we've come up with an innovative way of, we have an app called Jisomee Meter. Jisomee is a Kiswahili word. Translated in English means that the customer, you're able to read on your meter and submit in the readings. So the role where we come in as an institution after you've done the reading is just in terms of validation. So it has really worked for us very well. Then also we came up with not disconnecting our customers. This is actually has impacted our revenue, because you know, normally in our country is unless you come and disconnect the water, most of the customers are not willing to pay. So we said during this period, let's just also appreciate what the government is doing and we ensure that the water is available to all our customers. So we are not going out and actually doing the physical disconnection. What you are doing is you're engaging the customers, understanding and trying to encourage them that yes, we understand the situation, but it's also important for you to actually pay for the services that we are providing for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nangole, for that answer. I'd like to now please invite Mr. Kwanga to give us his answer on the first question. Mr. Kwanga, the mic is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad to be part of this webinar, and I bring warm regards from Uganda, especially National Water and Sewerage Corporation. In terms of the general guidelines that have been given by governments, of course, we are not very different from the other panelists as they have indicated in other countries. The issue of social distancing was emphasized by government. The temperature detection at each of the points, wherever we would be going, in some of these critical locations, that was emphasized by government. The face masking, the washing, hand washing and sanitizing, all those have been emphasized. Now, in terms of the National Water and Sewerage Corporation, where we've also put emphasis and ensure that we are in line, or we oblige what government has guided. In terms of social distancing, we've gone ahead to define schedules so that we have half of the workers keep at home and the others come to office. But even then, for those who come to office, they are supposed to wear those masks and to wear the masks. But for those who are at home, we needed to make sure that they keep again working. And that's when we came up with a solution whereby we have customized dongles, internet dongles, that connect these users onto the intranet. Because since most of our systems are not on internet, for security reasons, we had to make sure that we come up with those dongles that are specific to connect to the intranet. And in doing that, the users were able, or have been able, to connect to systems that are on the intranet. For example, the customer management system, the payment system, so that they're able to continue doing their works. Secondly, in that same line of social distancing, we've also done the implementation of the virtual conferencing, specifically Zoom. And I think this has helped a great deal in making sure that work continues, because the people who are at home and those who are in office, you are able to meet and then ensure that the works still do what? Still produce. There's also been, we've come up with a strategy to give data to users or to staff, those key staff, so that they are able to access some of these critical applications, and also they are able to get the relevant communication that is necessary so that they can extend support to the customers. Again, we've also emphasized on the side of the customers, we've emphasized the use of the e-payment platforms. We have various payment options, paying through the banks, paying through mobile money, the telecom phones. So we've emphasized more on the mobile money payments, so that somebody, wherever they are able to continue doing the payment. We've also emphasized the use of the CRM, Customer Relationship Management app, so that our customers are able to continue giving us the issues and the complaints that they could be facing within the field, at their premises, so that we can attend to them. Again, for the case of the wearing of the masks and so, I think still that particular one has been also addressed by the issue of having the video conferencing facility. So basically, I think in line with this question, those are the strategies that we've been able to put in place in terms of IT to address the COVID issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kwanda, for those answers. We will have more opportunity to dig a little deeper into some of your what your organizations have done and what your government has done. I'd like to now hand the mic over to my colleague, IT manager at AFWA, Mr. Nikes Kwaku, to go ahead and take you through our second question. Nikes, the mic is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Biao. Thank you, dear panelists, for your contributions. And I have a question for you. How has COVID-19 affected the availability of IT equipment and services? What challenge are you facing today? Mr. John Nkwanga, you have the floor.
Well, thank you very much. Actually, the COVID, in terms of affecting the IT services, for instance, in case of the equipment failure and we needed to replace hardware because we've had these scenarios, we've had delays in response from the vendors, given the fact that each of them that you do contact, they tell you their manufacturers are what? In lockdown, or they have closed shop. So now you find that you have a challenge to, attend to this kind of problem. So we've had a delay, but how we've gone around that is that we've been able to improvise from the backup equipment that we had. Secondly, in terms of repair of equipment, like for example, printer that require sometimes specialized skills. For this, you find that still even some of the technicians who have the skill have been in lockdown. So how we've gone around that is to restructure the usage of the IT equipment, especially the printers, so that we adopt the pool usage of these equipments. So we've withdrawn the equipment that have been used by the senior officers, and we put them into a pool setup. And that has enabled us to have more availability of equipment that we can use in a pool, but also at the same time reducing the number of failures that we have in the various equipment areas. Then we've also had, in terms of service and support for the applications, this one, we've not had much of a challenge given the fact that most of our systems are developed in-house. For example, our billing system, our e-water payment system, our e-inventory, e-procurement, and the HR system, all those are developed in-house. So the capacity to support them is in-house. So we've not had much challenge in that particular area. But by and large, there has been a delay in terms of support for the cases of the hardware and the services for the hardware equipment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nkwanga. Mrs. Chumi.
Thank you. In our case, the main challenge that we faced is sourcing of IT equipment. Like my colleague has also said, we have delays in commencement of certain projects and completion of certain projects because some of the equipment has had to be procured overseas. Our major trading partner is South Africa and in some cases China. So due to the cross-border restrictions, we've had challenges to complete and commence certain projects. So this is a major challenge to us because projects have stalled. Other challenges are shared IT equipment. In some offices, due to the nature of their work, it was not a problem for them to have one computer to be shared within an office due to the nature of the work. Now with this pandemic, it's not a good practice that we keep on with that arrangement, sharing of computers. We have to make an arrangement to procure computers for everyone. So a challenge there is to do with finances. But we are making some progress. We are making plans little by little to procure computers for each and every staff. Another challenge was to do with the internet bandwidth. Due to the increase in the need for virtual meetings and online collaborations, we realized that our internet bandwidth was not enough, and then we had to increase. And like I already said, we have a video conferencing facility. Soon after we installed that, we realized that our bandwidth wasn't enough to support that. And so what we did was to have a dedicated line for the video conferencing facility. That's how we went around that. Those are the main challenges that we faced, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Chiumi. Mr. Nongole?
Hello?
Your microphone, okay, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah,
now.
but unmuted. Yeah, we had similar challenges. One of the things that we realized is the issue of the resource utilization. Because most of our workers now are working out remotely. Now, in terms of bandwidth utilization, we realized that the bandwidth that we are using was not enough. So we had to increase in terms of the bandwidth, which also had an impact to our cost of operations. Because you realize that if we are using around 30 MB, we had to increase to almost 60 MB. And 60 MB definitely comes with an extra cost. And in terms of also facilitating our key staff to work from their homes, the issue of cybersecurity also came on board. So we had to do a bit of investment in our cybersecurity, because the more you allow your staff to work out from home, now the more vulnerable that you're also exposing your system to various attacks. So we had to do a bit of investment in terms of cybersecurity. Another impact that we had is in terms of the project implementation. Actually, we had to slow down on our projects because before COVID came, we are actually implementing various projects. So with this, when it came, actually, we had to slow down because some of our consultants had to go back to our home countries. And in terms of also the cash flow, because definitely, when you look at what we are collecting prior COVID and post-COVID, we've actually realized that in terms of the collection, it has actually gone down. So it is becoming very difficult for us to continue sustaining some of the projects that we are implementing. Another key challenge that we had is the issue of the supply chain disruptions. When we have fiber cuts, because most of our operations now are relying on the internet. Right? So when you have fiber cuts, at times it takes, initially it used to take less than 2 hours for our service providers to fix such incidences. But currently what is happening is when you encounter the issue of fiber cuts, it takes almost 2 to 3 days. So actually we are realizing we are encountering some disruption in that area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nongole. And for the fourth question, what impact has confinement and deconfinement, if any, had on IT services in efforts to ensure safe working from home? Mr. Nongole, you have the floor, you can continue.
One of the impact that we've had is the issue of cybersecurity. As I mentioned earlier, it is actually a challenge. Initially, we are focusing more on the cybersecurity relating to softwares and the applications that we are running into the institution. But now with most of our staffs working from home, now we need to focus on our staff in terms of educating them on challenges that are related to cybersecurity, the issue of social engineering. So, okay, we keep on, taking them through those processes. Then another impact that we had is the loss of revenue. Definitely when you suspend in terms of billing your customers and when you don't disconnect them, definitely it's going to affect your revenue base. Because like one of the key challenges that we have in this country is unless I disconnect you, actually it's going to be very difficult for you to actually pay for the resources that you've used. So we've realized that our revenue collection have also gone down. And in terms of the revenue collection going down, definitely it affects your operational cost in terms of you meeting your operational cost in terms of chemicals, fuel, water pumps, and procurement of the spares. And in addition to that, it has also resulted into us deferring a critical investment that we had planned to do during the period. We've ended just our financial year 2 days ago, and we've realized that some of the plans that we've said that we are going to do, actually we've not been able to meet our targets, which is also going to affect in terms of the service delivery. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. John Nkwanga, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. In terms of the impact this has caused, I would majorly say that this has attributed to increase in expenses, mainly because for example, the increased number of users or staff who are supposed to work from home, they all needed to be given dongles, the customized dongles that I talked about. And their acquisitions from the telecoms, all that is attracting a cost. Secondly, we needed to give them data. And of course, you have to subscribe to a monthly, charge that is appropriate for such a user, okay? And again, in terms of licensing, because if you are to have for example, the Zoom we are on, it's not free of charge. So we have to still invest in terms of licensing so that we can sustain these kind of services. Again, the other big impact has been on a stretch on the IT services, web services, because even users who were accessing these solutions on the LAN at ease, now they are supposed to access them from home, meaning that there is a stress on the services, the web services that are deployed to the users. And this is also in addition to the customers, because the customers are supposed to log some of these complaints and also use some of these apps, and all these have their parent systems onto the national infrastructure, our infrastructure. So there has been a stress, but how we've managed to go around that is that because before the capacity we're utilizing these systems at about 70%, but now when you look at the monitoring graphs, you find that they are stretched beyond 90%. So that has been the additional impact. The other one is, of course, the revenue collection. Much as we've encouraged some of these people to pay through using their telephones as an option, the major option to use, but still revenues have been affected a great deal. In being affected, it has also affected some other operations in the process. Basically, I think that's what I have for this particular question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nkwanga. Mrs. Chumi, your microphone, please. You have the floor.
Thank you. In our case, we haven't had cases of total confinement yet in our organization. Just a few, and as I already said, we're working in shifts. But earlier on in the pandemic, our organization had a plan in which one of the action points was to provide internet access to all staff, and that was budgeted for. But currently we have implemented that for just a few, not everyone else, due to financial issues. And also currently, not all services have been made available to all staff who are working from home during their shifts. And due to that, a major challenge that we have or that we are facing because of that is response to work-related issues that are relying on IT services that haven't been made available to staff working from home. So for instance, one may have an issue to sort out that may require a service from the office, so it gives us, it causes some kind of delay because they now have to wait until they make themselves available at the office again. So that's a major challenge that we're facing. But in terms of managing performance of employees, every employee is mandated to provide a weekly work report electronically, so that is well managed. That's all I have on this. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Chiumi. Thank you, dear panelists, for your good contributions. And now we have 2 questions from participants. The first question is from Dr. Esper Jacobet from South Africa. Are IT department in water utilities ready to rise to COVID-19 challenge? For this question, I give the floor to Mr. Nkwanga.
Come again, you said the what?
IT department in water utilities ready to rise to COVID-19 challenge?
To raise to COVID-19 challenges.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, yes, the IT departments in the utility industry, if, for instance, they put up systems that are resilient, then they are able to face this kind of challenges. Then they are able to do what? To cope up with these sort of challenges. For example, we've learned from what we've experienced that, for example, we need to be ready, and we have solutions that can facilitate teams to work from home. So meaning that even if we had, for instance, a challenge this going forward, then services can still continue going on. We should have solutions like, for example, apps, and also, apps whereby customers are able to log their complaints from those apps wherever they are. And then those complaints, we are able to receive them and then attend to them as and when they have been received. So I think if we put in place solutions of this nature, then we can actually be able to handle these sort of challenges.
Okay, fine. Thank you, Mr. John. And the second question is from Kenya, Mrs. Lucy Njambi. And the question is, how do we help young water professionals in Africa to innovate more in ICT and be a major pillar in the COVID-19 response? For these questions, I give the floor to Mr. Nangole Martin.
Yeah, thank you. I think what the utility has to do is to encourage innovation and mentoring of the young water professions. If I can give an example of what our institution is doing, is that we've come up with strategies whereby we encourage young people to innovate and provide for us the solutions that are really going to help us address some of the key challenges that we are having in the water sector. A good example that I can give is like in our institution, there's a requirement that we wanted to enroll all our customers through our web portal, because initially when we used to contract our customers, it was a manual process. So when the idea was brought to us, we had to talk with our young water professions. And actually what surprised us that they have the ability, they have the skills, and they have the capacity. So what is required from us is just to encourage and mentor them, and also give them that opportunity that, yes, if you have this idea, the institution is actually going to encourage you, come up with the idea, evolve, and once it's in production, now they should come up with a reward scheme that, yes, these young professionals have come up with a workable solution. And actually, like for us, this innovation that they were able to come up with, it has really helped us, because one of the things is that it has really been very impactful during this period, because you can imagine our customers walking into our offices with this decision of movement, it could have really provided to us a big challenge. But with that idea that they were able to come up and as the top management, we were actually able to motivate them, we've realized a lot of benefits. Because one of the things that we've realized is the improved revenue stream for what these young water professionals have done. So as management, what we are only required is to encourage, motivate them, give them the reward scheme after they have really come up with those workable solutions. In addition, that also what we need to do in the utility sector is we need to train them. Because one of the things that happens with the IT sector, it's a very, very dynamic thing, particularly when you look at that field of cybersecurity. It is something that is always putting us on our run, because you never know what is happening tomorrow. So we really need to train them. When you look at what is happening at the application level, you've heard about the issue of the data analytics, the issue of the artificial intelligence. So we really need to train them so that they're also able to cope up with what is happening on the IT platform or in the IT sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nangole. And the last question from Malawi, Mr. Gustav. Will the gains achieved during this pandemic inform the working life of utilities post-COVID-19? Mrs. Chiumi, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. But I think, yeah, the gains that have been achieved during this pandemic will inform the life post-COVID-19. In some cases, like in our case, due to the pandemic, we have been able to source funding from other organizations who have shown interest in the projects that we are doing. And post-COVID, I think it will teach us something to say partnerships are very important in completing projects or in scaling up projects. The project that I'm referring to is, we had a certain project that we internally were working on, which was supplying water to low-income customers. We had a pilot on, we tried on 4 standpoints for the low-income customers. And seeing the success of the project, some organizations showed an interest, they had confidence, and they offered us funds to scale it up to 30 more standpoints. So moving forward, we will see that alone we cannot achieve greater things. Some technologies can get expensive, and we have learned a lesson there to say partnerships are really the way forward, moving from here.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Chiumi. Mr. Nkwanga, do you have a word for this last question in 1 minute?
The last question.
Yeah. Let me repeat for you. Will the gains achieved during this pandemic inform the working life of utilities post-COVID-19?
Come again?
Will the gains achieved during this pandemic inform the working life of utilities post-COVID-19?
I would say yes, because the gains are actually reflecting that we should be ready anytime this kind of challenge or this kind of pandemic is experienced soon or later. So meaning that the utilities, they need to be ready and take on and carry on these gains forward. For instance, for the case of, I would give the case of national water. Like when we had when we had an issue with the cash flows, we realized that we needed to continue operating. But in so continuing to operate, we needed to come up with innovative ideas on how we should streamline operations so that we can continue working. The case in point, I would still say the video conferencing facility. Because before we would have people move from all their locations, come at head office, meet, and in so doing that, you are supposed to pay allowances, you have meeting expenses, and also it will consume a lot of time, So now all those expenses were cut down by just establishing this. And I think it's going to be sustained as a way of having meetings within the organization. Secondly, like I told you, the issue of printing and photocopying, where each person was having a print and so. Okay, the printing and photocopying, and again, the reduction in the bandwidth. For example, we're having an issue with the providers who are charging us a good amount of money, but we managed now to go ahead and negotiate with them to reduce the connectivity charges, and we managed to actually negotiate up to half, actually more than half of what they have been charging. So I want to say that yes, the gains have to be sustained so that they become part and parcel of the operations of these utilities.
Okay, fine. Thank you so much, dear panelists. And for the next step, I give the floor to Mrs. Jiao. Mrs. Jiao, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kwaku, and thank you to all the panelists for having answered our questions so far. I'm going to take you to, I guess, two more questions. The first one of which is about looking forward and onward. COVID is here to stay with us, clearly, and hopefully there will be a vaccine very soon developed to make sure that we actually are able to cope with it through better mechanism. So within within confinement or outside of confinement, and also other safety parameters that have emerged with the COVID, has this crisis been an opportunity for your utility? Because surely it's been an opportunity for all who have catered to your utilities with different services to adapt and to be more resilient. So for your particular utility, within the context of your IT functions, has this crisis been an opportunity for you? And if so, which one? Please, I will ask Mr. Nangole to perhaps pursue with the question, please. Thank you.
Thank you. One of the things that we've seen from Nairobi Water perspective is that remote working or working from home now is a fact of life, because we don't know when this pandemic is actually going to disappear. And one of the opportunities that we are seeing from our end is that any investment that you are doing in terms of ICT platform, you need to be flexible. Flexibility in a way that you don't know what is going to happen tomorrow. You don't know where we are heading. Because if we, like the scenario of Nairobi Water, if we had not actually prepared ourselves into really virtualizing our environment, I think it could be a tall order for us to go what we are undergoing through in this COVID period. Through the kind of investment that we've done in terms of flexibility of our ICT infrastructure and our ICT platform, it has enabled us actually to support our staff to work remotely from home. Another thing that we are seeing is in terms of security, because our approach has been that traditionally we've been focusing on the system security, but now there is what we call the people-centric security. Because the moment you have a workforce of around 1,200 working away from home, and in that environment, you don't have any control at all on what they are doing, you can imagine the kind of damage they'll do to your system. One, you are not updating your antiviruses, you are not monitoring what they are doing, because everything is actually being done remotely. So no matter kind of security system that you put in place in terms of systems, yes, that is on your premise. But now, these people who are working from home, how do we really address their security concerns? So for us now, we are going to change a shift. We are now going to focus on people-centric security by just creating awareness to them so that they understand that any action that they do from their remote session, it can have a bigger impact to the operations of the company. Another key aspect that we've learned is the issue of business continuity. You have to be prepared because you never know. Mostly we've been focusing on the business continuity, looking at the hardware failures, looking at fire, looking at any other kind of disasters. But COVID has taught us that when you are crafting your business continuity strategy, you just need to be open and come up with strategies that will stand any eventuality that will come by. And through that, actually, we've been able to, see our institution be able to deliver their mandate. Yeah, in terms of service disruption, we've actually had very, very minimum impact. So my take is the issue of business continuity, the issue of cyber security, moving away from system-based to people-based. Then the other issue is the issue of remote working, because it is here. We don't know how long it's going to take, and it is here to be with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nangele. Thank you very much. I would like to now move to ask Mr. Kwanga to please answer the question.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think I will also not differ so much from the previous panelist because of the challenges associated and the cost increase. We've managed to come up with the innovative strategies so that we are able to reduce the cost. So it's from the cost perspective, from the cost reduction perspective, that I see this as an opportunity, because I think we've been working, given the fact that everything has been at our disposal, and we're not mining about certain areas which will actually have touched and we reduce the the costings. For example, I was talking about the issues of streamlining the printing, whereby you have a cost reduction in terms of paper, a cost reduction in terms of paper, and also maintenance. Okay, then you go to the issue of putting up other solutions that are also geared towards extending accountability to individuals. For example, you have a print server whereby you are able to know the staff, what are they printing, how many pages have they printed, and what is that they are printing. So they are conscious, and in a way, you find that you are touching, you are extending the accountability to the individual. But all this is coming in the face of what? Of COVID, so that the costs can be reduced. I talked about the links, the connectivity. connectivity is one of the high costs within IT. For last year, we have about 200 links because we are distributed throughout the country. We have about 200, over 230 locations which we are managing in towns. So now each of those locations you have a link connecting there. So now we've gone ahead to negotiate with service providers to reduce the connectivity charges, and they have accepted to reduce by over 50% of what they have been charging. So I would say much as there have been challenges, but yes, it has been an opportunity for us to have cost-effective solutions put in place.
Thank you very much for that answer, Mr. Kwang. I would like to now hand the mic over to Ms. Chume to please answer the question.
Thank you very much. In a case, yes, I agree to say the crisis has indeed offered us some opportunities, because in some way I can say, in quotes, I can say we have been forced to upgrade certain of our systems due to that. And through that, we have also been able to source funding for certain projects that were otherwise going to be a problem. There was going to be a problem to internally fund these. An example that I already mentioned at some point was the introduction of water standpoints for the low-income areas. This was a project that Longora Board was funding by itself internally with a few standpoints, but after seeing the effectiveness of the project, we were able to source funding from some organization which helped us to scale it up. And secondly, on virtual meetings, that is an opportunity for us, because initially we, as an organization, we never really used much of these virtual meetings or online collaboration platforms. But now it has become a norm, which is helping us to cut on costs when it comes to holding meetings and time as well. So this is an opportunity for the organization. And another opportunity is the intensification of digital payment platforms. Initially, customers were not adopting this technology as we wanted them to, but with this pandemic, they see it as a need also. They see it necessary that they have to use these platforms for payments and for fault reporting or querying. And this has become an opportunity for us. Yeah, our role has been to step up marketing efforts, and we have seen an increase in the adoption of this. Thank you.
Thank you for that answer, Ms. Chumi, and thank you to all of you. Before I go on to the last question, it's really interesting to see that all your three utilities kind of came up with the same or similar or close opportunities by way of developing new approaches to security, obviously, in the face of a new situation. So I take away the people-centric security, which is really key, might have been there the whole time and just not really on the radar, and gained visibility with the COVID situation, whereas the deployment of infrastructure within the hands of people using it remotely needed more control. It probably was always there, and it just never really made it onto the radar. So the cost reduction is a big deal, and obviously this would have not been possible without your IT functions within the water utilities. That is crystal clear to me now. Because you were able to realize these cost reductions through discipline of usage, through not just cut back on paper costs, but also increase in the usage, for example, of your connectivity. Because if your charges were reduced or your pricing was reduced by 50%, surely the provider might have, gained through economies of scale, through increased usage of the internet, so the things balance out a little, and it's interesting to actually see that dynamic, whereas you're in a win-win situation where you're not at a deficit and your provider is not at a deficit because you're increasing your usage of the internet. I won't dig in too much further, but I see that there's clearly opportunity, and that IT functions are a major artery for water utilities for all of what they're doing. Without the beautiful technologies that are emerging and being used technically to provide water and increase access to water and sanitation for all throughout the continent, there's certainly the fact that the information technology departments are absolutely instrumental in making sure that the services that are being provided are are met with success. Because providing service is one thing, being successful in providing the services is a whole different dynamics. So while the technology is in an industrial sector, I guess communication and information technologies in particular need perhaps increased attention by the decision makers to make sure that resource allocation is also very strong in those areas of their operations, and that they get full attention because they are a major artery for the utilities. I would like to now move on to ask you to answer one last question, which is really close to the previous one that you just answered. And the question is, all in all, and you've got 1 minute to answer these questions, what lessons have you learned as IT departments? And I emphasize as IT departments. What major lessons have you learned? I'd like to hand the floor to Ms. Chiyomi to please answer that question, if you would. The floor is yours.
Thank you. We've learned a number of lessons through this pandemic. The pandemic has taught us how obsolete some technologies can get, how easily obsolete they can get through pandemics, and maybe we can add natural disasters perhaps. Think of the biometric access control system that I mentioned earlier, which used fingerprint recognition. This I do not think will have a place again with this pandemic. It will never return. And secondly, it has taught us as IT department to always be ready enough to embrace new technologies. And it has increased our focus area when it comes to risk management. It's going to be a shift from just looking at bits and pieces of IT components when considering risk management. This is going to be a shift to also look at an entire system to see what will happen if something happens to such and such a system. So these are the lessons that we have learned.
Thank you, Ms. Chiyomi, for your answer. I'm sorry to cut you off. We just ran out of time, but thank you for your answer. I'd like to ask Mr. Nangole to please also give us his 1 minute lessons learned through the COVID for the IT departments at the Nairobi Water Corporation. Please, Flora.
Thank you. One of the things that we've learned is that business continuity planning and disaster recovery management goes beyond the notion of terrorists, earthquakes and fires. Pandemic, now it's a really thing. Whatever we plan now, we really need to re-engineer our processes, not in terms of days, but minutes, because within minutes, you need to be prepared and see how you are going to react to this pandemic the way it is happening. And actually, it is shifting our attention, the way I said, remote working or our staffs working from home. It's a reality. It's a wake-up call for us. And it's something that, it's something new that, because we never imagined. Traditionally, people have been saying that I have to be allocated an office for me to be able to work. But this COVID-19 has taught us that you don't need to have an office space for you to come to the office. You can still work from your house. So it is something that as a utility, we need to focus for the people who are not offering key function, particularly for the back office operation, why should an institution continue investing into an office space and yet you put in technology that now will be able to support them to work remotely from their homes? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nangole, for that answer. And I will like to ask Mr. Kwanga now to please give us his 1 minute so we can have a closing statement. Mr. Kwanga, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I think for me, from the perspective of systems, I think utilities need to build you need to build resilient ICT systems that are able to adjust to these kind of challenges. And in so doing, they need to as well be tested regularly. So that in case of these kind of situations, they are able to cope easily. Secondly, because of the issues that we've been having in terms of cash flows, I think utilities need to put in place prepaid kind of systems so that in such situations we don't have to continue running after customers, but customers should actually pay and then we continue giving them service without chasing them again for payments. That's what I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Kwanga. Thank you again to all the panelists. I want to just give the public again information on who you are so they know where to find you if they have questions. Mr. Kwanga has joined us from the National Water and Sewage Corporation in Uganda. Ms. Chiyomi has joined us from the Longway Water Board, and Mr. Nangole has joined us from the Nairobi City Water and Sewage Corporation. I want to thank all the panelists, and I want to again thank my colleagues who have worked very hard with me on delivering this webinar. Mr. Nikes Kwaku, who is the IT manager at the African Water Association, and Mrs. Stephanie Nzikona, who is not on screen, but definitely with us in this webinar. And she is the manager of communications at the African Water Association. I'd like to please invite all the participants to fill in our survey, which will come to you shortly after this webinar, and it will take you no more than 4 minutes to complete, and we would love to have your feedback on this particular communication. Thank you again to all, and looking forward to welcoming you at the AFWA next webinar. We will let you know, and you should be on the lookout. Thank you again.